I have all these ideas. Lots and lots of concepts. I just simply lack the skills to execute on my dreams.
Rossi Bites.
So it was 2 weeks ago on a weekend that I was sitting out on my patio on a beautiful day, and I had an idea for a software application that I wanted to try and develop. One problem, though, is I'm not a developer by trade. I will say that I work with professionally a lot of very highly skilled and talented front-end and back-end developers. But for this particular project, I don't have access to those folks as it was more of a personal endeavor. This is where I'd like to introduce the little adventure that I took with ChatGPT with their new model, the 4.0 model, in trying to see how well it can do coding a software application based on criteria that I've given it for how I want the application to function. So the first thing I did was I told ChatGPT what I was looking to build, which in this case, I was looking to build a request for quote module to be used, for example, on an e-commerce website. And request for quote, really high-level explanation of what request for quote is. And I'll do this in the context of a business-to-business e-commerce context. A customer comes to the site and they're looking at a particular product or maybe a bunch of different products, and they want to ask the seller if they can get a special price for those products or that product. So in the process would be that the buyer would initiate a request for quote, also known as an RFQ. That RFQ then gets submitted to the seller who is actually selling the products, and that seller then reviews the request for quote and then has the ability to negotiate back and forth with the buyer. And so the dialogue between the two can go on as long as needed. But in the end, what ends up happening is the buyer receives a quote from the seller and then has the ability to accept it or reject it. Upon accepting it, it's ultimately converted into an order in their shopping cart, and then they check out and go through the checkout flow. So having a good idea of how I wanted this to function, one of the first things I did was I asked ChatGPT for a high-level design plan for developing an RFQ module for an e-commerce application. And you'll see on the screen here that it provided me with a pretty comprehensive summary of how to go about building this. It even gave me ideas of what the flows would need to be for the front end, for the back end, what type of database I would need, and also timelines on how long it would take to develop, go through the testing phases, implement it, etc. So I was pretty impressed with this. So what I did was over the course of a weekend, and I would say all totaled, it was 1 day's worth of my time. I spent a lot of time, and as you can see here, the conversation was very lengthy between me and ChatGPT. And one of the reasons it's very lengthy is because ChatGPT has a reputation of providing code snippets that when you put them into your code editor and then you run the application, you often run into errors. So there's a lot of going through and copying the errors back to ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT telling you, oh, this is probably why you're getting this error. And then you go through this iterative process back and forth until it actually works properly. I'm going to show you a demonstration right now of what I was able to build using ChatGPT to help me develop the code. Before I show that though, what I'd like to say as a disclaimer is that I realize developers out there view generative AI potentially as a threat to their jobs. I would say that I would absolutely prefer to work with the talented and skilled developers that I do work with any day of the week over using AI. But what I can say is someone like myself who does not have coding and programming experience, using generative AI, I find huge value because I'm able to take my ideas and my dreams and actually build concepts and prototypes, and in this case, an actual fully functioning application. So check out this demonstration video. So in conclusion, I'd like to just offer this up. Rather than viewing generative AI as potentially a threat or a replacement to developers of today, I would view it more as augmenting your workload and increasing your velocity so that you can focus more on the features and functions of the great products that you're working with, rather than having to focus more on some of those mundane tasks of development. And again, for people like me who are not developers naturally, generative AI gives us the ability to be able to ideate, envision things that we would want to see as an application, even develop visual mockups, for example, and upload those. And using the multimodal capabilities, having generative AI create code based on an image mockup that you provide. It's just a really powerful tool. And again, I view it as more of an augmentation to your workflow than a replacement. If you found this content useful, please click like and subscribe, and I'll continue creating content like this in the future. I'd also be interested in what you thought of this particular demonstration that I put together and the application that I developed.
Rossi Bites.